85% of the no votes against new homes since 2016 have come from the same 4 councillors. And Simon's, literally the same 4, 85% of no votes. They're notorious for no votes, a couple in particular. And these are the same people. Simon's example is spot on. I think I have another one where literally perhaps it was crocodile tears around housing affordability and the need for more homes, and 13 or 16 minutes later voting against half a dozen or a dozen homes.
Yeah.
It's just laughable, really. And what worries me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first crack at an occasional podcast. I'm Alderman Simon Behrakis, Alderman in the City of Hobart. We've got Felix Ellis, MP, Liberal member for Braddon in the State Parliament with us, and we've also got Louise Elliot, who is a candidate for Mayor and councillor in the upcoming council elections, who I look forward to hopefully be sharing a seat with. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, Simon.
Thanks.
Hello, Felix.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Look, I suppose we would start with and just to introduce ourselves and say a little bit about ourselves and something that people might not all be aware of about yourselves. I'm Simon. I'm obviously born and bred in Tassie. Greek background, very proud Greek background. And something that the everyday person might not know about me is in my spare time, I like to do a fair bit of martial arts. I do Muay Thai, and actually just came from a training session. I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself already, so go easy on me.
Well, look, I might go next before we go to our guest as well. So I'm Felix Ellis. I'm a Liberal member for Braddon, based here in the beautiful northwest coast of Tasmania. Husband's father of a 1-year-old, which has been an interesting journey already, and probably something that people, and I'm a plumber as well, plumber by trade, and probably something people don't know about me, which makes me look very funny wearing thongs, is that my second toes are bigger than my big toes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Louise Elliot, and like Simon said, I'm standing for council this year. My pathway to council has come from looking from a housing perspective, wondering where all of the houses are that we need. So how supply and demand have got so out of balance. I'm a HR manager to pay the bills. I'm a mum with 2 young kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, pretty busy. And I like to look through gardening catalogues and buy bulbs. And that's how I know I'm officially now over 40, because I'm excited about the daffodils and spring flowering bulbs. Yes, so that's me.
Great.
Are you a peony fan, Louise?
Oh, I love a good peony.
Yes.
I can't get them going, but yes, no. I'm right into it.
I'll send you a photo of some of my peonies. There's a particular breed of peony called Felix Supreme, which I'm a big fan of. Obviously, we're in peony country up here in the northwest.
I'm sure you're into that because of how beautiful the planet is, and not because of the name Felix.
Yeah, exactly. I need peony pics.
Very good. And how is the council elections going at the moment for you guys? I know I'm sure you're all very busy.
What's your take, Simon? How are you finding it?
It's all gearing up quite quickly. I think there was a period where the federal election was finishing. Everybody was waiting for the dust to settle, and then everybody's starting to come out of the woodwork. And as the ball starts rolling, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We've already seen some of the rhetoric in the papers about Louise and about council issues. But I suppose, and you did touch on it a little bit, Louise, about what prompted you to decide to run for the council, because it might be similar. It sounds similar to why I decided to run last time. You see things happening and you see the council doing things. You're not happy about the direction that the city is taking. And you can sit there and criticise, or somebody said, "Well, if you've got such a strong opinion on this, why don't you run yourself?" Okay, yeah, I'll do that. And I think it's great that you're doing that, because I think if you want to see change and you want to see the council change the direction, or any level of government change direction, there's a few people that are willing to actually put their names up and have a go. So it'll be interesting happy to hear your thoughts on that, Louise. But it'll be interesting to see how things go for the next couple of months.
Oh, it's been non-stop. it's still a few months before the election, really. But yeah, what's brought my attention to council is definitely the housing issue. And I feel like I've seen too much to turn a blind eye to it. Also, I mean, I've lived in Hobart all my life, other than a few years in London, and I've seen the explosion of house prices, you know, from you used to be able to buy something in one of the blue-collar suburbs for $100,000, and they're now going for 600,000, and it is astronomical money. And I was lucky when I was born, and I made a smart decision back then to buy one house as a single chick. And then I was lucky enough to buy one more when I was 30. And that was just the timing that I was born. So I do feel for other people who now are coming through where those prices are so much higher. So I'm a landlord. I manage my properties myself. And I also started a group, an association for other mum and dad landlords, small-time people, to represent their interests as well, because they are like our neighbours. 20% of people, households really, 20% of households own an investment property, and they typically only have one. And these are people who, admin assistants, electricians, hospital workers, things like that. So when the prices were all going up like crazy after COVID, I just had to look and think, well, where are all the houses? Why have we got 30 groups, 50 groups going through an open through inspection? Why is there such a mismatch in supply and demand here? And the common denominator to me was, well, they all have to go through council. So what's happening there? COVID also took the council meetings online to YouTube, which is fantastic. And I started to actually notice
very revealing, though, perhaps.
Very revealing. Should have happened years ago, and thankfully it is now. And I noticed in watching the meetings a very clear trend of some people knocking houses back. And then I thought, hold on, I'll step back here and I'll actually look at the minutes, because I clearly need a new hobby, obviously. And I compiled the voting records from the minutes. I know. And I thought, oh no, this is a real worrying trend. And even if the houses that are getting through, it's Hobart is seen as a real difficult place to build. And I just worry about the impact that's having. And then as I started to see more topics and taking into consideration that I'm, you know, a ratepayer and what our money's going to, I feel like I've seen too much to turn a blind eye. And yes, if I need to turn words into action, so that's why I've bit the bullet, copying criticism from some sides, putting yourself on the line. But I believe that our common sense is lacking in the Hobart City Council, and I think that's what I bring, a real person perspective. Yeah, so that's my pathway. And
I have to say, right, Louise, but perhaps as someone who is based outside of Hobart, I mean, I think the whole state looks at what happens in the city of Hobart and just scratches their head. It is mind-boggling. And I mean, I'm based in the local government area of Latrobe, beautiful place, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the state. It's got some of the lowest rates, and we're building a heck of a lot of houses. But maybe would you be able to give us a sense of what's actually going on in terms of, say, some of these houses getting knocked back? Because I don't think that perhaps a lot of people like my neck of the woods are really clear on just how much anti-everything stuff is happening down in Hobart City Council at the moment.
Look, Felix, I suppose the best way to explain that is we have had council meetings where one of the items on the agenda will be us talking about how we have a housing crisis, and within an hour of that item, we'll be voting on a residential application for units that will create dwellings that people need, because it's been acknowledged that we have a supply issue. And the same people that will come out and say, we've got a housing crisis, this is a failure of government, the government needs to step in, it's everybody's fault except for ours apparently, will then vote against houses the same night that we talk about housing crisis. And I think the best place to look is the graph that Tanya Dennison started, which I think you've taken carriage of now, Louise.
Yeah, carry that on.
Shows the voting record. And the way it looks at the moment, it's, you know, you've got, I think it starts from 2016. And, you know, half of the council, many councillors have only been elected since 2018, such as myself. And you've got new councillors that have beaten pre-existing councillors in the amount of dwellings they've refused. And
yeah, that's it.
And
on
the
that
amount
graph,
of
it tells the story.
and the amount of dwellings that have been refused when planning officers, expert planning officers, have recommended approval are in the hundreds, just by individual members. So it's a bit of a tale of two opinions, isn't it? Or two positions. You've got people that talk about, we want more housing, we need more housing, we agree that we've got a housing problem, we need to do what we can to address it. But when time comes to make a decision that might not line up with their political views, suddenly it's, no, this isn't an issue at all. You see that if you actually listen to debates, and I know Louise sometimes listens to council debates. I've had people ring me up or message me during council meetings saying, I'm watching the meeting, I can't believe such and such said that. My first question is, why? Why would you do that to yourself? But you hear the arguments that are made. We've got the short stay issue, which is coming up as we speak, and we have short stay applications that are getting pulled forward that shouldn't actually even be coming to council. That come to council because certain elected members have brought them up. Recommended for approval, objectively meet the criteria of the planning scheme, and we'll have a long argument for every single time that this shouldn't be approved because we have a housing crisis and this is taking housing away from the housing stock. So that's one argument. The same night or other nights, we will have items come up for housing, and people will try and start a conversation that, look, we really need to assess our priorities here. Maybe we should be looking at encouraging more developments, encouraging more housing. And the response by the same people that will refuse short stay accommodation because they don't like it will respond by saying, no, we have to assess this against the planning scheme. And housing supply isn't a relevant criteria of the planning scheme, so you can put that away and stop trying to conflate the issue, and we'll stick to talking about the planning issues. And sometimes that's even on items that were recommended by planning officers for approval. So it's a bit of a where they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to pander to that cohort in the community of NIMBYs that see any kind of development as greed or as a bad thing. But then want to blame others for the problems that they're causing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that clearly shines through when you compile the stats. I mean, it's really quite astounding that a lot of when a development passes, it often passes in spite of the no votes from a core bunch of people. And when looking at the numbers, 85% of the no votes against new homes since 2016 have come from the same four councillors. And Simon's, literally the same four, 85% of no votes. They're notorious for no votes, a couple in particular. And these are the same people. Simon's example is spot on. I think I have another one where literally perhaps it was crocodile tears around housing affordability and the need for more homes, and 13 or 16 minutes later voting against half a dozen or a dozen homes.
Yeah.
It's just laughable, really. And what worries me is that Hobart is a city by name. We're a big town, probably more by nature, but we need homes to accommodate people. Look at the population growth we have. And it's irresponsible to be encouraging people here and saying, come, if we're not able to provide the housing supply so that people can literally live here or afford to live here. So I think if people have the view that basically an anti-development view in my mind, they must see the Hobart as being a place where it's all single story. You don't see everyone. There's every other block is a park or whatever it is. That's not how a growing city functions well. I mean, there's consequences of that. I mean, none of us want to see our awesome heritage buildings taken away or our green spaces, but we need to be welcoming more efficient homes, more density where it makes sense in like those CBD blocks. And they might say they want it, but the actions don't align with the messages that are out there. We're shooting ourselves in the foot as a council because you're not helping the situation at all. And the reason this year why I particularly thought, well, I'm going to run for council now is because the council breakdown in terms of those who understand the need for housing and have a more balanced and common sense approach for things, it's 50-50. Like in terms of it's in a really precarious position as far as I'm concerned, which is why it's like now
one way or the other, right?
One more anti-development, and Hobart isn't in significant trouble.
It's kind of at the moment the way the makeup. I think I'd suggest it's similar to perhaps the old Senate crossbench in the previous Parliament, where you had you got one side of the chamber that has a pretty consistent view on against, and another side that has a pretty consistent view for, and then there's a bit of a crossbench style where you got two or three people that whichever way they flip is effectively the deciding vote. And I think at the same time, and you've been hard with this one, Louise, and I definitely have as well. That we've got these people that just want to rubber stamp any developments to keep their development mates happy. It's not about that. I think if you look at the record of myself and Marty Zirko, you'll find that there's actually a lot of deferral motions when we talk about planning, because the attitude shouldn't be look for an excuse to refuse, which a lot of people do. And we can rip up. We've got a reason why we can knock this one back and keep all our mates happy. If there is a balance that needs to be had, and Louise said it. We do have there is something special about Hobart. And it does have a lot of really important, really significant heritage. So we want to preserve that, but it's about a balance. We do need to allow the city to grow, but we want it to grow in a sustainable way, and we want it to grow in a way that serves the interests of the people of Hobart. But so we do see applications from developers that aren't appropriate or are problematic in certain elements. The way to address that isn't to go, oh yeah, Ripper, let's vote against it. Identify what's wrong, talk to the proponents, and say, is there something we can do here to make this make this something that we can happily vote for? We've got one that's coming up at the moment, and I've spoken to neighbours. It's going to impact on a pub next door and just completely destroy their sunlight and effectively put them out of business. But that's not a reason for the project not to go ahead at all. Let's look at it. How do we do this, and how do we do this in a way that's economically feasible for the developer, but also fair for the community and appropriate. I might just share something. I'm not sure. We've got the little button here, so I might test it and just show this. Where are we? Here we go. I'll do this. So what you can see there is what Louise and I were discussing just earlier. And there's some pretty clear indications of who we're talking about. I'm not going to name any particular names because people have started to get very litigious in using the council code of conduct to try and silence criticism. But you do see, there's the number of dwellings that are being voted down by the same people that are calling that there's a housing crisis is in the hundreds. That's not how many people could be housed. These are just the homes themselves. Many of these are 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses. So you can safely double or triple the number of those numbers, and that's how many people you're talking about that could be housed.
And the thing that's probably striking to me on that one, Louise, is how many are ones that are actually also recommended by the planning bureaucrats in the Hobart City Council.
Exactly. That's the real one to look at. Is that pink column? I mean, when the professional experts with their postgraduate diplomas, no one's saying that, it should be a rubber stamp at all. But to be in the hundreds of homes that the planning officer's apparently judgment was a bit off seems a bit strange. The thing is, and Simon's again right when he says, it's painful to watch at times because you see literally people sitting around the table begging for a reason to refuse against it. Like really almost begging the planning director to give me something so I can say no.
And it gives up the ghost as well, because you always hear that they want good planning outcomes. You hear Cassie O'Connor in Parliament, who I think named me up one day as somebody, along with you, Felix, as a liberal troll, and people that just want to see everything approved and don't actually care about the planning scheme. This gives up the ghost, because the amount of times, and just not 2 of the people on there are current Greens members and 2 of them are former Greens members. It's not about planning outcomes because they're voting against the recommendations of the officers. It's about a political view and veiled with, we're following the rules when the rules suit them. It's the same. We heard, it was a couple of years ago that Anna Reynolds puts up all these documents saying, but we're not anti-development. Look at all these big developments that we approved, and you go through, and I think 4 out of the 5 were ones that she opposed. And said, look, we would like Hobart to be one of those places where the art galleries are and the cafes are, and the workers can come in from other municipalities to come here and enjoy all of that. So it's this very elitist, Hobart's a place for those who can afford it, and everyone else can come here and enjoy it and then go back home to wherever it is that they live. But we don't want them to. We don't want those houses here. But it's the same thing, Felix, and you've been very strong on this, because it's not this attitude isn't just a council issue. It's not just a housing issue. It's that same attitude. We've got people that will stand in the way of housing that we need, and then you've got people that stand in the way of industry that we need, and it's the same people that are supergluing themselves to Davies Street and Macquarie Street, or the same people that are chaining themselves to log trucks. So I'd be interested in your thoughts about this, just the whole broad issue, all the way from the council level all the way through to some of these things that you've been talking about, and some of the damage these people are doing to our economy and our community.
Yeah, exactly. And perhaps one of the things that really sticks out in my mind is that young people need jobs in Tasmania. And one of the things that you hear time and time again in our community is the importance of knowing that people's kids, as they're coming out of school, will have an opportunity to get a great job in Tassie, so that can be, what sets them up to buy a house, what sets them up to have a family, get married, all that sort of stuff. And if we have a group of people out there who are running roughshod over other people's ability to go to work and make the things that we all need in our daily lives, then we're going to be stepping ourselves backwards as a state. I mean, we're talking about housing supply, and one of the critical things for housing supply is access to timber. We've seen that during the pandemic, right? And if you make timber scarce and people can't get it, they're going to have to pay more for it. It's going to be more difficult to buy a house. And we've got people as we speak chaining themselves up to equipment in the Tasmanian bush, in regrowth forests that have been harvested, multiple times over the journey. And those people are stopping houses being built for young people, and they're also stopping young people having the jobs that could help them buy those houses. I mean, it is just this mad catch-22, and it's part of the reason why I think we all need, in Tassie, people with common sense need to start pushing back against some of this anti-everything stuff, because we simply can't afford to be in a position where we're sending our young people away and we're stopping producing the things that we all need in our daily lives.
You see over the years when the original forestry wars happened, and you saw a party that was set up purely with the purpose of stopping a complete industry. And the argument back then was, we want these other sustainable industries like our aquaculture industries and our tourism industries. So they've worked a fair way towards destroying the forestry industry. And now they're moving on to the same aquaculture industry that they spoke about not long ago. And then these days you hear them talking about, and they're trying their best to attack the tourist industry. So what they don't want this place to be a place where things get made or things get done or people create things. They want this place to be one where the government provides all of the salaries for everybody, because it's the only way that they can have their cake and eat it too. It's not a feasible. The world that they're pushing for isn't a feasible one. And I think there's a lack of honesty there. And at the end of the day, and like you said, Felix, and like I said earlier about council elections, I think too many people allow themselves to get bullied into silence on a lot of these things. That's not just the NIMBYism. It's also like many of those work politic issues. Those issues where people will say, look, you privately they'll say, oh, this is crazy. But okay, so speak up against it. Like, oh no, can't do that because you get screamed off the roof. I'll lose my job. People need to be willing to say what their views are and to defend what their principles are, because otherwise, you talk to business owners. Business owners come up to me. It was before the last election, now in the lead up to this election. It'd be great if we had a better council. We didn't have a council that was doing this and this and this, and it'd be great if we could change the Lord Mayor. So cool. Okay, so say something. Oh no, I can't. It's that fear that people have from speaking out, because the Greens don't have that fear.
It's not safe. You're not safe. Yeah, you've got to have a strong backbone to do it.
The only way to change that is, I think, for people to start to actually speak out and to say what they do.
But also for those who are spruiking inclusion, to actually be inclusive and tolerant of a different point of view, because we all have opinions. We're all entitled to an opinion, and to be championing inclusion and it not being inclusive at all and tolerant. It's very hypocritical. And on that topic where you're talking about, the people chaining themselves, gluing themselves, I mean, everyone has a right to earn a living, and I don't think people should at all be disturbed in that. And there's ways to go about things, and I don't think actions like that at all help the cause. When you see that stuff, I mean, I'm not following the legislation to it, but my principle is let people do their jobs, get yourself out of the way, get yourself off the equipment. Don't be a royal pain in the ass, basically, because you're not doing your cause any favours at all. We lose respect for it. Find other ways to get your message out where it's actually respected and heard, because they're doing themselves a complete injustice by carrying on like that, is my perspective.
And that's the sad thing, I think, Louise, because, we're all conservationists. None of us want to trash the place for the next generation. We want to look after it. But the extreme nature of some of the actions of these people, and it's fundamentally anti-democratic as well, because the people that are going about their daily lives and their businesses and working in their jobs, they have a legal right to do so, and they're backed up by the democratic laws of this state and this country, and people trying to run roughshod over it. And whether it's out in the bush or at a mine site in my neck of the woods, or the Sydney Harbour Tunnel, saw the other day with, people chaining themselves to cars in there to try and, blockade what they're doing. And it's just madness. It doesn't serve anyone, and it fundamentally gets in the way of decent debate. We can have a disagreement here, but that's the way that we should be doing it, rather than trying to impose our views based on how many locks and chains and bits of concrete that we can attach ourselves to.
Well, and effectively, if you're, there's this talk, where laws that are being put up and attitudes against these sort of protesters are, anti-free speech and trying to take away the right of free speech. But if your version of protesting, I don't think anyone of us oppose anyone's right to protest or to say what their views are. But if your version of protesting is to chain yourself to somebody's truck, to superglue yourself to infrastructure that prevents people from working, your protest is depriving somebody else. Your right to protest is depriving somebody else of the right to engage in their day without hindrance, and you're removing somebody else's right
exactly. It's very different to having a gathering on the lawns.
But it's the same as freedom of speech is really, really important. You can't exercise that by taking away somebody else's. And honesty is a big part of this, and part of that is if you want to engage in that discourse, you need to be willing to have that discourse, and not for it to be a one-way street. Because it's the same thing. If you yell and scream and heckle to stop people from saying things you don't like, you don't believe in freedom of speech. You believe in freedom of your speech.
Exactly.
Freedom of speech somebody's belief in freedom of speech is tested when people are saying things that you don't like. And there needs to be a self-awareness there to be able to listen to it and to disagree. And that's where you test your own views, is by offering up those arguments. It's not by screaming at people things that you don't like or accusing them of those ad hominem attacks like we've seen with just you recently. The idea that because someone says something that I disagree with, it must be a lie, so I'm going to call them a liar. That's not how you engage in debate properly. But it seems to be the tactic of many on the left who want to attack the character of people that say things that is uncomfortable or inconvenient to them.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's mad.
I think that's it. I'm definitely ruffling some feathers in that regard, and I certainly don't make it a habit of lying, and as far as I'm aware, I haven't lied. I think I just share information with the community that reflects poorly on some people, and some people are particularly nervous about holding onto their seat, as they rightly should be. And if it makes you uncomfortable, does not make it misinformation. They're very different things. So, yes, and this is I'm a straight shooter. I tell things as it is, and I would expect the same in return. But I don't expect to be, I'm not a liar, so I won't take that brand because it's not true. But I will continue to be a straight shooter. That's just the way I am. I can't be anything else.
And look, Felix has ruffled feathers. You've ruffled feathers, Louise. I think I've ruffled a few in my short time on council as well. But I think if you're not ruffling those feathers, you're not engaging in issues properly, because there's always, and I'm not saying politics has to be this real combative thing, but when there's people that say things on the other side of politics that I don't agree with, and it'll animate me somewhat. But that's if people aren't, if you're running for a certain view of politics, and there's people that have an opposite view and they're not ruffled by you, it means they're not concerned about you. And people clearly seem to be concerned about you. I think that's a good thing. So look, we might just wrap it up, because I think we've made pretty good time there. But I think I think this was a good first go at our podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good concept.
Thank you.
And can I maybe suggest a wrap up by something to look out for in the next week or two that people might not see coming? I haven't briefed anyone on this one, but I'm sure that there might be some answers there.
Very good.
I've got a couple of things, but probably only one I can share.
So there's even more.
I'll be coming up with some pretty clear common sense policies, especially around parking and how important it is for our city. So I'm looking forward to telling people about them, really.
Yeah, because people are pretty anti-car and getting to work in your own private transport, from what I've seen on Hobart City Council.
Exactly.
And look, I think, and so recently council did a survey of the community and of the business sector, and the results were actually, I think surprisingly to myself, almost exactly the same. It was the same concerns that the business community had. It was the same concerns that the general community had. But those issues are the issues that we see playing out politically in council all the time. The number one by far was parking, and then was planning and housing, and then congestion. So I think they're the issues that this election is really going to come down to. And so the conversations that we're going to be having into the future is, what do we do to get more good houses being built? What do we do to fix the short supply of parking that we have in certain areas of the city, and to make it less of a chore and less of a punishment to actually try and find a parking place to make that. It seems like, for many people, that's by design. And what do we do to clear congestion in a way that doesn't mean taking all the cars off the road, or turning Davey Street into a car park? So they're the issues that I think are going to be coming up, and that's when people are going to be putting forward, and I'll be putting forward my vision for Hobart and how I would address those issues. So, but I think there'll also be a fair bit of political chicanery as we approach October and election days. How about yourself, Felix?
Look, probably, as some people know, I've made a speech which has gained some attention here locally and interstate and around the world about forestry and the importance of the native timber industry. And the good people at RMIT ABC decided to do a fact check on me, which in their view found that I was being completely unfactual. However, I've been contacted by quite a number of forestry scientists who are involved in carbon mitigation, who have shown quite clearly that the claims that I made that were so-called refuted by the RMIT team and ABC were actually true. So I'm looking forward to publishing some information to enlighten our everyone's ABC and Victorian University about what the science really says on that. So keep your eye peeled.
I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to people's reactions to that as well. But I reckon we'll leave it there. Thank you again, Louise, for joining us, and
no problem.
Leave you all to your day.
Thanks, guys.